A thin drizzle clung to the city streets that night, turning the lamps into halos of molten gold against the dark pavement. The rain wasn't heavy, but it was relentless, the kind that soaked through your clothes before you even realized it. The sidewalks glistened like mirrors, reflecting the blur of neon signs and passing headlights, and in that hazy glow, life felt strangely suspended, caught between exhaustion and hope. Mark Weston stood by his black SUV, coat collar pulled up high against the biting wind. His day had already stretched far beyond the usual business hours. The boardroom battles, the endless calls, the weight of running a company, it was enough to drain anyone. He had been ready to head straight home, maybe check on his daughter Emily, tuck her in, and call it a night. But something stopped him. Across the lot, on a lonely bench outside the community shelter, sat a woman. Her shoulders were drawn tight under a faded hoodie, her hands gripping a worn leather bag as though it held the last scraps of her world. She didn't move much, just sat there, chin low, eyes shadowed but sharp, flicking up every so often like a hunted animal scanning for danger. Mark didn't mean to pause, but he did. His fingers tightened around his car keys. He had promised himself, after the divorce, that life would be predictable, stable, safe, not just for him, but for Emily, his 9-year-old daughter who deserved a father steady as stone, not one swept into chaos by impulse or misplaced sympathy. No more rescues. No more entanglements. Just a quiet life. And yet, there he was, standing in the rain, staring at a stranger who looked like she was barely holding herself together. "You can't stay out here all night," Mark said gently, stepping closer. His voice was careful, measured, the way one might approach a bird with a broken wing. "There's a storm coming." The woman stiffened. Her grip on the bag tightened. "I'm fine," she murmured, though the tremor in her voice betrayed the lie. Mark lowered himself a little, crouching so she wouldn't have to crane her neck. He tried a small, disarming smile. "I'm Mark. I run a company nearby. I don't usually go around bothering people, but you look like you need a warm place to stay." For a long heartbeat, she said nothing. Her eyes darted toward the street, searching for an escape route. Then, as if her strength ran out all at once, she sighed. Defeat softened her posture. "Claire," she whispered finally. "I'm a nurse. Or, I was." Something in the way she said was landed like a stone in Mark's chest. That one word carried loss, collapse, a life that had slipped off its rails. He didn't press for details. Instead, he gestured to the SUV. "Come home with me. Just for tonight. I've got a spare room. And Emily, my daughter, she'll be glad for company." Claire froze, eyes narrowing in surprise. Doubt flickered across her face, painted there as plain as fear. "Why would you help me?" Mark didn't have an easy answer. Maybe it was because he knew what it felt like to lose everything. Maybe because Emily had asked him, just last week, why some people had no beds, and he hadn't known what to say. Or maybe because, for all her weariness, Claire still looked like someone who deserved a chance. "Because you look like you deserve one," he said simply. And that was enough. She followed him to the car, hesitant, but too tired to argue with the offer of shelter. The drive was quiet. The windshield wipers thumped a steady rhythm, and the silence between them stretched. Finally, Claire broke it. "I didn't plan on this," she whispered. "Losing my apartment, my job. My mom got sick and I stayed at the hospital for weeks. By the time I came back, everything was gone." Mark kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. "You don't have to explain. Not tonight." When they reached the Weston home, the warmth inside wrapped around them like a blanket. Emily peeked from behind the banister, her hair mussed from sleep, eyes wide with curiosity. "Daddy, who's that?" she asked softly. "This is Claire," Mark said, his voice carrying a warmth it hadn't in years. "She's staying with us for a while." Emily's shy smile softened the room. Claire blinked rapidly, as though unused to kindness, and whispered, "Thank you." The days that followed felt like walking on thin ice. Claire moved with caution, helping in the kitchen, tidying up, trying not to disrupt the quiet rhythm of father and daughter. But little by little, the walls she had built around herself began to crack. She found herself laughing at Emily's silly stories, the sound rusty but genuine. She caught herself humming while folding laundry, something she hadn't done in months. Mark noticed everything. He noticed how Claire listened to Emily with her whole heart, how her presence brightened the house in small, unspoken ways. He noticed, too, the weight she carried, the shame that made her flinch whenever she thought she'd overstayed her welcome. Meanwhile, his own life wasn't free of storms. His company was at a turning point, the board questioning his focus, doubting whether he still had the edge to lead. And here he was, taking in someone they'd call a risk. One evening, after Emily had gone to bed, Claire broke the fragile peace. "I should start looking for work," she said, voice quiet but firm. "I can't just stay here." "You're not a burden," Mark replied, leaning against the counter. "But if finding work makes you feel better, I'll help." That night, they worked on her resume together, shoulders brushing as they leaned over the laptop. Something unspoken shimmered between them, frightening, steadying, undeniable. Weeks later, Claire secured a part-time nursing position. When she held her first paycheck, her hands trembled, eyes brimming with tears. Mark and Emily celebrated with homemade pizza, the kitchen echoing with laughter until it felt like even the walls were smiling. But life wasn't done testing them. One afternoon, Mark's ex-wife announced she wanted full custody of Emily. The words reopened old wounds like a blade. Mark wrestled with anger and fear, uncertain how to prove he could provide stability while standing beside a woman still piecing her life back together. Claire, sensing the storm, doubted her place in their fragile world. One rainy night, eerily similar to the night they first met, Mark found her packing her bag. "You've done enough for me," Claire whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't want to make things harder with Emily." Mark's heart thudded painfully as he stepped closer. "You're not making anything harder. You've made our lives better." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what it means to be offered a home when you feel invisible." "I do," Mark said, placing his hand gently over hers. "Because you did the same for me." The custody hearing was tense, the air in the courtroom colder than stone. Lawyers traded arguments, documents shuffled like weapons. And then the judge turned to Emily. "Do you feel stable living with your father?" Emily's small voice rang out, steady and clear. "My dad makes me pancakes on Sundays. And Claire helps me with my homework. We're happy." Her words silenced the room. The ruling favored Mark, granting him full custody. Outside the courthouse, relief hit like sunlight after weeks of storm. Emily hugged Claire tightly, tears and laughter tangled together. Mark met Claire's gaze, gratitude and something deeper shining between them. That evening, twilight settled over the garden as Mark set out 3 mugs of cocoa on the porch. Emily curled up between them, sighing contentedly. "You know," Mark said softly, turning to Claire. "The night I stopped for you, I thought I was saving someone. Turns out, you were saving me, too." Claire's smile trembled, but it was sure. She reached for his hand. Together, they sat beneath the awakening stars, knowing their lives had shifted forever. Not because of a single act of charity, but because both had found the courage to open their hearts, to risk, to hope, to love again. And that, dear listener, is the kind of story we live for here on Midnight Tales. A reminder that sometimes, the smallest choice, pausing for a stranger in the rain, can rewrite the story of your life.